When you give a large dose of either mescaline or LSD, one of the things that you notice is it produces catatonic behavior. Like this animal had a large dose of LSD, and you can see how relaxed he is, and you swing him around. The difference between a rat without any hallucinogen. One of the main things, you put him in a very bizarre posture, and he just stays there, which is not true for a normal animal.
Hallucinogens have, I would say, 3 or 4 key effects. One key effect that everybody thinks about, because the term hallucinogen indicates that you will experience images or scenes we label a hallucination. That's something that has no corresponding stimulant in the outer world. So the brain produces the image. There's no corresponding stimuli out in the world that you, for instance, you sit here and certainly you start to experience seeing an animal that's not in the room. That's a hallucination. When you just see that the walls are moving, going with the flow, with the music, or are distorted, then this is an illusion, a visual illusion. So most of the people experience firstly visual illusions, and only a few of them reported them true hallucinations, so seeing more than there is a really input for.
Take you to the hospital. Bill, you're okay. Bill, the doctor will give you some medicine. Now, you're okay now. Bill, can you hear me?
LSD ei siis aiheuta näköharhoja, vaan muuttaa ja vääristää havaintoja. Vaikutus johtuu aineen aiheuttamasta muutoksesta serotoniinin nimisessä välittäjäaineessa. LSD kiinnittyy serotoniinin reseptoriin 2A ja herkistää käyttäjän väreille, muodoille, äänille ja kosketukselle. LSD vaikuttaa myös 2 muuhun välittäjäaineeseen. Glutamaatti kiihdyttää hermosolujen toimintaa, mikä selittää sinne tänne sinkoilevat ja sekavat ajatukset. Tunteita säätelevään dopamiiniin vaikuttaessaan LSD taas synnyttää voimakkaan euforian.
So there are a number of secondary effects, or you can say it's a cascade of effects. So what we try to understand is how do these alterations, how do they relate to the specific psychological or perceptual alterations we can see with this kind of drugs.
90-luvun alussa yleistyneet tutkimusmenetelmät, magneettikuvaus ja tietokonetomografia antoivat mahdollisuuden tutkia entistä tarkemmin huumausaineiden vaikutusta eri aivoalueisiin. Franz Vollenweiderin ryhmä otti hallusinogeenit uudestaan tarkastelun kohteeksi.
We think that on the one hand, the profound alterations we can see with these drugs when people are more in a euphoric, ecstatic state gives us a hint about, in the broadest sense, about how is the brain organized, how does it function when you experience a kind of ecstatic state.
Very, very cool. Very, very groovy.
And the other way, the other state, or the other pole of this ego dissolution, where you lose insight, where you lose autonomy, and your ego gets fragmented and split, this looks much more like a schizophrenia-like state.
Usually a separate tent set up, which we call the trip tent. When the person person comes in with this type of problem, the only way you can make contact is physically, by hugging them, holding their hand, and trying to make them feel the presence of your body. And by holding a person, you give them a certain reality, the feeling of someone near them, someone who's helping them.
Voimakkaasti ahdistava huono matka johtuu Follenweiderin mukaan mielen hajoamisen tunteesta. Aivoissa tapahtuu kaksi asiaa. Toiminta kiihtyy talamuksessa, jonka numakkeiden kautta kulkevat hajuaistimuksia lukuun ottamatta kaikki sensoriset hermoradat. Toisaalta aivokuoren toiminta heikkenee, mitä on havaittu myös skitsofreniapotilailla. Ekstaattinen olo puolestaan liittyy vilkkaaseen aktiivisuuteen aivokuoren usealla eri alueella ja pelon tunteita hallinnoivan mantelitumakkeen poiskytkentään.
So far we have no evidence that classic hallucinogens of the LSD type result in a dependence. There's some psychological dependency that can occur, but basically there's no somatic signs when you withdraw the drug that people suffer from withdrawal symptoms. So this is unique to these hallucinogens.
Jokaista Alexander Shulginin keksimää huumaavaa molekyyliä testaavat tutkija itse, hänen vaimonsa Anne sekä joukko vapaaehtoisia. Annokset ovat aluksi pieniä ja aineen vaikutukset kirjataan tarkasti.
I think probably one of the most memorable was the material 2CB, which I found to be a very friendly, very gentle onset thing, one that allowed me to look at a museum at paintings and begin to realize for the first time why the painter painted what he did. And as you're seeing through the paintings into the painter. And that sort of communication I found to be extraordinarily interesting and quite provoking. Opening doors in your mind is a very essential thing to do because your mind is filled with all kinds of material, ideas, memories, recall, who knows, past lives, future lives, that are behind closed doors. And there's only one way of finding out what's there, and that is to open. Oh, better one at a time. Otherwise, you may be a little overwhelmed with a rush of information. But I think that concept of opening the doors of perception is very, very important, very essential for learning about yourself. Everyone has a beast inside of them. It's one of Anne's favorite areas when working with patients. Say there's an animal in there that you don't know. You're not the subconscious, the unconscious, the animal you don't know, and you will never be at peace with a lot of your negative aspects, your psychological problems, until you get to know that animal a little bit. You may never agree with it, but her argument is not only should you know that animal, but just for a brief moment look at the world through that animal's eyes, and that kind of thing can resolve many psychological problems. So that's a very real concept of opening that kind of a door.
Vaikka Shulgin availee kemian avulla ovia omaan tajuntaansa, hän tunnustaa menettelyn riskit, eikä sen vuoksi kannusta ketään psykedeellisiin kokeiluihin.
I try not to be a chronic user of any psychedelic. I keep my main thrill is discovery, not exploiting, but discovering, and I want to keep myself open for that.
Kuuluisin aine, johon Alexander Shulginin nimi liitetään, on ekstaasi, josta on tullut nuorison suosima huume. Itse asiassa ekstaasin molekyyli MDMA keksittiin ja patentoitiin jo vuonna 1914 Saksassa, mutta silloin aineille ei keksitty käyttöä. Shulgin kiinnostui MDMAsta ja hämmästyi sen poikkeuksellista rakennetta.
It was sort of an uninteresting, middle of the road chemical, and they dropped the whole thing. That was published about in early 1970s, I believe. And then I heard about, through a friend, of this material that was not a psychedelic, but it was being used in Chicago. And I found the structure of it, and I synthesized it, and it was indeed a fascinating compound. And my main connection with the compound is I was the first to publish human activity. But by no means was I the inventor of it. And I published a note with a couple other people in the scientific literature as this as being an opener of a person's attitude toward his own self. And I suggested strongly that it would be a very excellent therapy tool. And indeed, it was used in psychotherapy for about 3 or 4 years until it was made illegal. And it was used around the world in a number of places.